Well, the murder trial of football star Senzo Meyiwa continues at the High Court in Pretoria today. Now, the spotlight remains on how the police handled or mishandled the crime scene. The police says Thobeka Mhlahlo was told or has told the court how she discovered a bullet case on the scene. Mhlahlo was the crime scene photographer on the night Meyiwa was killed. Our reporter Manqoba Mchunu is following those proceedings for us and he joins us now. Manqoba, of course, you know, some developments yesterday in court. What can we expect from today's proceedings as well? Maybe just give us a little bit of a recap from yesterday.
Well, indeed, Baron, we're expecting the cross-examination of Lieutenant Colonel Thobeka Mhlahlo to continue with the lawyers representing accused number 5, Advocate Zabile Mshololo, expected to begin her cross-examination. And yesterday, you recall that we heard quite a number of details pertaining to that investigation that police had conducted at the Khumalo house a day after Senzo Meyiwa had been killed. And what came out of her testimony yesterday was that she was the one who had found that bullet projectile just hours after Senzo Meyiwa had been killed. And she detailed how she had to follow, the fragments of the door that had been shattered at the time. And this is how they managed to locate that bullet projectile, which was on the kitchen cupboard on that morning. Of course, we've heard testimony from warrant officer Thabo Mosia, who also told this court as to the fact that it was in fact Thobeka Mhlahlo who had found that bullet projectile. We recall that Mosia was the first to arrive on the scene just hours after this incident had occurred in the early hours of the 27th of October, and he had then combed the scene but was unable to locate that particular projectile. It was only the next day when the rest of the police, including Thobeka Mhlahlo, had arrived that they managed to locate this particular projectile. But of course, what also we got to hear yesterday was around the bagging of that particular exhibit. There were a lot of questions that were asked about the procedures that police had followed in bagging the evidence. This particular projectile was bagged in a brown envelope, unlike the rest of the evidence, which had been bagged in a transparent evidence bag. And of course, there were questions as to why this was the case and whether police had something to hide by following that particular way of bagging the evidence. But also, in terms of what came out in court, we also heard that none of the exhibits that were found on that particular day had blood stains on them. And I think this came out of the cross-examination of the lawyer representing accused number 3, when he questioned as to whether there was any blood that was found next to this bullet projectile, as to whether there was any blood on the bullet projectile itself. And I think what we got to hear was that no blood stains were found on the scene. But of course, she did face a grueling cross-examination as far as the police work is concerned and why the evidence was bagged in the particular way, with the defense contending that perhaps the evidence was planted on the scene to trump up a case against the accused that are before court. But perhaps let's take a listen to what the defense had to say as far as this is concerned.
I'm going to put it to you, ma'am, that thing that you are referring to as a fragment from the door and that bullet which you say you found on the kitchen top, those things were never there. Somebody made it sure that for whatever reason that they could have heard that those things were put there.
Maybe the court will then, referring to you, that you can inform us as to who that person is, because that's where I found the items. And when the items were found, it was myself, Musia, and Zwane.
And I can further tell you, ma'am, that which you are referring to as a fragment that came from the door, it was just a drawing that was made with a corky pen in order to trump up a case, a possible case against these poor accused persons that are before court today.
Maybe maybe you know as to who formed part of that theory or conspiracy theory, but this is how I found it, how I found the scene.
Thank you so much, Manqoba Mchunu, of course, our reporter who will be watching proceedings today in the Pretoria High Court. Of course, the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial continues today. We'll give you those updates a little later.